Weber. I am so happy that you're here. You inspire me. You are such a radiant woman. You are a creator, a giver. Ever since I've met you, all I've seen you do is create, contribute, gather people, make your community better, create communities, bring people together, and you're just constantly generative. You're such a generative woman, and a generative in terms of just creative output, but also in that word is the root to the word generous. And so there's people who build things, and then there's people who build things with heart and really with a heart to contribute. And that's what I've always experienced in you. So thank you for being here and role modeling such a beautiful representation of feminine leadership.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's beautiful to step in and see your facilitation and you come online so strong.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so your area of study lately has been love relationships. Now, prior to that, my experience was that there was a lot around community, and now it's kind of like community, love, and relationships. Would you say that that's a big area of your devotion and study and practice right now?
For sure. It's actually been over a decade. When we met, my work was in the dating and relationship space. I see our intimacy journey is our life story, and there's no other topic that's more interesting to me than to ask somebody about their love life and see where the conversation rolls from there.
Okay, so you learn a lot about a person based on their love life. Okay,
Mhm.
well, we won't have you psychoanalyze me in my love life, but we'll speak about this
I'd
in a
love
way that
to.
hopefully I had a feeling. I'm like, okay, I'm so curious what patterns you would pick up and what feedback you would have to give. But I agree, our love life, our intimate relationships, whether in love or in business, are our greatest mirrors and opportunities for growth and transformation. But let's start with dating. Let's start at the phase of before somebody is in a beautiful relationship or ideally beautiful. We can get to that. For someone like me, I'm not in partnership, desired partnership. It's an interesting dating landscape these days because of a big loss of just like values around relationship, and especially on the coast. I'm curious what you see there and how it might be different in Austin or in Texas versus it was in LA. I think. I don't. Did you used to live in New York?
I was New York City 12 years,
That's what I
2003,
thought.
2016.
Yeah. So let's
That
just, so I know it's a big, that's a big question, dating. What do you most want people to know about dating? Let's start there. Like for someone who's not in a relationship, what do you want to seed in someone's heart about dating?
I think, in order to have a relationship that is fulfilling, of course, it starts with self. And, we've heard a lot of people talk about like self-love. Like what actually is self-love? Well, to me, I look at it as this process of falling in love with your life. And I, and then you get to decide, okay, well, who do I want to be? What type of life do I want to live? And to me, there's nothing more enlivening than growing, like than going after growth, going towards the things that make you feel uncomfortable, removing layers of your ego, your fears, the negativity, the things that are holding you back from being the highest, greatest version of yourself, coupled with ever increasing acts of sharing, because we give to who we love. So it's like this process of like, what scares me? Oh, let me move towards that. And then you fall in love with yourself through overcoming your fears. And then you get to share that experience with those around you. And whether that's like a small pod of people that you relate to, of your family or your closest friends, or even more on a mass, like bigger social media, creating great impact, speaking on stages. Like what are you passionate about? What pulls you, and go and do that. And, a decade ago, before I entered into love and relationships as a career, I had married myself.
Mm.
And after I had married myself, this is 2014, after I'd married myself, I started to see that there was other women around that time, like the 2012, 2014 era, who did the same thing. And one of them, I'm blanking on her name, but she did a TED talk about it. It was, she married herself after she had married two men first and went through two divorces. And I got lucky because I was like, I'm going to marry myself first. So that full on commitment to becoming the best version of yourself and enjoying your life in the process, not taking things too seriously. And then you can go ahead and draw in the right partner. And I was just saying to my significant other, and hey, whoever's listening who's a coach and maybe you support people in your relationships. And Charlene, I know it sounds like you're currently single right now. I was single for 8 years while I worked in love and relationship. And there's something that we look at people who are not in relationship like, oh, there must be some, like, I want to work with somebody who's in a healthy relationship. But there's so much that you learn through dating experiences and like being able to actually know when a relationship ends and end that relationship gracefully and then open the door to the
Mhm.
next one. I've been with my partner now for the past 2 years. And I, I was just joking with him and being like, thank goodness, like I was single when you came along, because the more that we evolve and grow, the closer that we get to the most right partner for us for the next phase of who we want to be within this lifetime.
Mm. Okay, so fundamental connection with yourself, love your own life. But within that, you're saying to move towards growth, towards what scares you, which often is intimacy and vulnerability and dating and relationship and putting yourself out there can be so confronting and bring up so much. And then what I'm hearing you say is that the process of dating, that each person that you date and the more that you elevate through each of those experiences, including how you end well and how you repair if needed and how you make decisions within the dating, that each person actually brings you closer to who you are and to the most aligned relationship. Is that your experience?
Correct. I was one of my love mentors, who I imagine Annie Lala, talks about how each person you connect with or you go on a date with, or maybe you're even just interacting with him at the grocery store or her, they are imagine that that person is then phoning your soulmate and reporting back. Are they ready to meet you? Like, and so
Whoa.
every interaction you're having is practice. It's all practice, all intimacy practice. Even if my partner and I are together at 80 years old and we've been together for 40 years, throughout that 40-year period of time, and even now as we're 80, we are still in a practice of love. So it's all just practice. You can't fuck it up. Just keep practicing.
Okay, so then important question, this is a selfish question. What do you think about the person who says, I'm not really dating until I feel like this person that I meet could actually be my potential life partner, husband, wife, father, mother? Or should we just say yes more often, as long as it's aligned enough? I'm curious how you hold that, because I can be someone who's like, unless there's just this crazy chemistry and it feels like a full yes potential, I kind of stay back a little bit. But I'm feeling in your inquiry and what you offer that Annie said, maybe an invitation to be more willing to date, even if we don't think it's going to be long-term partnership. So I'm curious how you think about that.
I would encourage somebody to get out the door and go practice having engagements and interactions. Another one of my mentors, Alora Nana, who's about 75 now, she implanted this line in my head years ago, which is practice seeing the one in all ones and being the one with all ones. If I'm working with a client, an individual in dating, and there's two types of people, and I could say in the past, there was this one period of time where I had two clients that I was working with as a private matchmaker. I don't do private matchmaking anymore. I'm more in a group experience, and I run a mastermind, a love mastermind, and they all become matchmakers for each other. But there was this one time when I'm working with two women, and one, anytime I would send her out, the men would fall in love with her. Like she was just this radiant and she would have a good time with every interaction. The other one, not so much. Like she never had any fun. She was psychoanalyzing everyone. It always felt like an interview. And so there was a difference. Like if I'm really, you know, the most enjoyable people to work with in their love life is ones who I can send them out and everybody will fall in love with them. And the reason that they fall in love with them is because you're playful, you're having fun, you're bantering, you're connecting, you're enjoying the other human being, you're getting curious about them. So there's all types of magic that can happen through those interaction. And we're in our love lives and in our lives in general, we're aiming to create narrative. Like,
Mhm.
what is the story juice that activates us and brings us to life? And those little banter encounters, we never know. You go on one date and you're like, oh, I don't think this is the right guy. Well, then say you go on the date, you're leaving the coffee shop, you're going for a walk, and then you run in to his brother, and then you meet his brother, and you and his brother vibe. And then you realize, oh my God, the brother is actually the right partner for me, and then you start dating the brother. Like we just don't know how the story is going to unfold. But until you say yes and go out and make new friendships and new kinships, then hey, I don't.
Mm.
That's what I would say.
Mm.
Go.
Okay, beautiful. So I would love for you to invite an inquiry or a practice or something to consider for both men and women. Maybe it's different, maybe it's the same, but for a man and a woman who is not in a relationship but would like to be in a relationship, what would you say to the women listening? And what might you say to the men listening? And if it's not different, if you just have one message, so be it. But also it's a co-ed group. And so what do you want to inspire in people?
I would suggest trying out We Deepen's four pillars of a true love relationship. They're really simple, and you can bring them into your work relationships, into your dating life, even if you are in a relationship with somebody who you've been together for a significant period of time. Bring these four pillars in. And they are number one, no attachment to outcome, growth comes first. Number two, both parties agree to own their own shit. Number three, all feelings are welcome and no internal process is condemned. And number four, the relationship is a place to practice love. Happy to go into each of them individually, but those four principles, take them and try them out and play with them.
Mhm. I think we will go a bit deeper into them as we transition into committed relationships, which we will in a moment. So I want to stay on dating for one more moment, and then we can transition into relationships and we can go into those pillars, which I think is a really beautiful framework also for how to create resilient relationships. Since that's the overarching theme of this experience, we will talk about love and relationships and how to create thriving relationships and also bring in kind of this topic of what makes them resilient. For dating, my last question here is, I know a lot of people have a hard time dating men and women, meaning that if they find a good match, the dating part's not the hard. It's the actual initiation of the date or finding someone to go on a date with. For women being asked on a date, men not asking, not knowing if they should ask. In this day and age, I think the Me Too movement honestly created a lot of harm when it comes to men actually leading and asking, and that's really caused a lot of there's a shadow down spiral effect that a lot of that movement created. I know a lot of men that are afraid to ask, and us women are like, please ask us. I want to be asked with honor and respect. And so we're in this age of dating apps and whatnot. And so when you have a client and they're not in a relationship and they'd like to be in a relationship, what do you advise them do? And maybe this is the part that's like, is it different for men or women? What might you say to a woman? What might you say to a man? But how do you encourage and get people to actually have dates that are fruitful?
First, I would encourage somebody to consider the type of person that they want to be in relationship with. And then think of where that person would be, and then go to that place. So, for example, if you are a health conscious individual and you like to be met in your way of viewing how you do life, being healthy and fit and active, go to a place where there's people that are healthy, fit, and active. The biohacking conference, for example. That's how I met my significant other, of facilitating a dating experience at the biohacking conference in 2022, which was
I
pretty much
love
a
that.
milestone. That was a milestone for the love and relationship industry because now there was an interest-based conference who had people who were primed for healthy relationships, biohackers, longevity experts, doctors, people interested in mental health. And if you can think about those people are actually primed for a relationship. So go to those particular places. If are interested in a particular um, methodology or religion or book, join a book club, uh, go to a church, go to where these people are, and then engage in friendship first, as opposed to, this, oh gosh, I got to get a date, or how am I going to get, like, go to places where you can actually see people again and again and again. Bonds build best over time. And so when you can go into an environment where it's not feeling pressure, like I got to go in and get something and find that person so I can take them out of this world and bring them back into my world so I'm not so isolated and lonely anymore. I heard you talk about the Hatch community as I was jumping on. I've never heard of it, but I imagine that those are people who are connecting with each other and getting to know each other. Also, finding places where people are studying love, where people are studying healthy relationship. Like
Mm,
that's a really important spot. There used to be I lived in Los Angeles for um, a few years, and Dr. Pat Allen, she's the author of the book Getting to I Do, a famous psychologist who's now probably in her 90s. And she used to do these first Monday monthly meetups in Culver City. And about 70 people would gather. She would do laser coaching, and after people would hang out and connect. Well, this whole room is full of people who want healthy relationships. What a great place to go to find somebody who's committed to living in love. I think that
mm.
piece is really important. Also, Pride We Deepen. We run love clubs. We run the love club and also masterminds, love masterminds, and immersions. So I'll give a little shout out to the work that we're doing as well. Come join us. You can check that out at wedeepen.com.
I love the invitation to create friendship first, that it's not about going out and meeting someone and initially asking them or being asked on a date, but actually building friendship. And is your experience that when you build bond, it's usually a pretty natural, like it's revealed if there's actually chemistry and a desire for more intimacy once there's already relationship built?
Totally. I am so surprised sometimes with this. This has typically been something that I've noticed amongst women, where they'll go on a date or and wonder about like if they should keep dating a particular guy. And I'll always ask the question, would you be friends with this person if dating wasn't an option? And sometimes they say no. And I'm like, there's your answer. If you
Yeah.
wouldn't even friends with this person, then why go on a next date with them? And when you focus on friendship first, you can be more authentic about who you are because you're not trying to get something. My significant other and we, by all means, I can't like I would have. My intuition could feel that there was something there to keep us hanging and connecting, but from the external world, I'm part of the Esther Perel discussion group, which is about 15,000 people on Facebook in a community there that they're all asking about their love lives. And early dating, I would go into that chat and put myself anonymous and ask some questions about our connection. And people would often tell me that we shouldn't be together. Uh, I had been single for a decade. He had newly exited a 17-year marriage.
Mm.
And I could feel that this man's soul needed to have dating experiences. And who was I to rob him from those experiences? So early in dating, like we had, there was a I was attracted to him for business purposes of, what he's done for his industry is something that I aim to see within the love and relationship industry. And Uh, so we would hang out, but I also had, in order to maintain my own authenticity, I had to protect myself in the way that I knew that would make it possible. So for me, that was a no penetrative sex. Because of course we want love and intimacy. We connect for, dating, like we're dating. We want play and excitement and touch. But I had that, no penetrative sex. And because of that, we were able to build a friendship and I was able to authentically be me while dating him at the same time without being attached to a particular outcome. And I could say things like, which I never say otherwise. I could say, can we get graphic on here? Like, I could say, if you stick your thing inside of me, I will suck up your sperm and impregnate myself. And I couldn't have said that if I had advanced in our intimacy in a way that would have clouded my own authenticity. So in
Mm.
dating, care for yourself and continue to connect with people that inspire you, that light you up, and then go and create stories together, create adventures.
I love that. Create stories, create adventures together. It brings me back to the conversation we had earlier with Lucy and Tarnowski about telling a better story and living a better story. So I love that you're bringing this into dating. Okay, so let's transition. So you teed up, you started dating your now partner, and now you guys are in a committed relationship. And you spoke of four principles of We Deepen that is really a framework for relationship, for dating, for any relationship, is what I heard, is even in business relationship. Why don't you say those again and let's go in a bit deeper and how those look in practice in a really applied wisdom kind of way, maybe even with an anecdote or two about how those have showed up in your own relationship.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so number one, no attachment to outcome, growth comes first. That doesn't mean that you don't fantasize about what the relationship could become, that you don't dream of a wedding or a baby or buying a home with your significant other, but it means that you're unwilling to contort yourself into any particular box or suppress any bits and pieces of you to make the relationship work. You're willing to outgrow one another if that means that you can truly be yourself.
Mm, that's powerful.
And how does that look in practice? It means that, okay, for an example, when um, my significant other and I got into relationship, uh, it was after a 3-month disconnection. I
Mm,
knew that I needed to rewire my system to unprogram any attachment that I had to, like, because this person at first was not available for relationship. So we disconnected for 3 months and we came back together. I knew at that time I was good with him or without him. I was happy either way. And so now to enter back into that relationship, I had requirements. And
mm.
I stated those requirements, knowing fully well that he might have said, I can't do this. But
So
it
you were
was
unwilling to sacrifice yourself, but you could only do that when you didn't feel that attached kind of dependency on this needing to have that relationship.
exactly. Yes. Yes. And those requirements that I put into place for my relationship so I could feel safe and connected and thriving was daily interactions, number one. Number two, we sleep in the same bed on more nights than not. Number three, becoming the bonus mother to your children. Number
Mm,
four, that our relationship is public and we role model love together. And five, that we have lots of adventures and sex and pleasure and joy together. And those are my five requirements.
mm. And how did you come to those? Did you find them because they weren't present previously and they were causing some pain, or they were the areas that you were compromising? Or I'm just curious what your process of getting really clear, like these are my non-negotiables, and then having the courage to with vulnerability really make those requests? How did you come to that?
Through challenge, through once we started engaging with one another, I um, had a moment where I hadn't heard from him for 48 hours. Like we had just started reconnecting again. We had a 3-month agreement for no contact that I had initiated. And now we're connecting again before the 3-month period of time. And it was vulnerable. It was tender. And now I didn't hear from him for 48 hours. And I nearly pushed send on a text message that said, I'm out. And instead I stepped back and I breathed and I relaxed my nervous system. And I dug deeper of like, what is it that you want? And sometimes it's hard to know what we really want until we're confronted with what we don't want. So
Mhm.
I knew that I did not want a connection. I did not want my energy to be drained with wondering when this person is going to write me back. I also knew that I wanted to share a bed. Like I want to eventually share a
Mm.
home with my significant other. And I knew that I would love to have the experience of being a mother one day, and that that was not, he was not necessarily fully open to, two teenage children, to jump out and go procreate all over again. Uh, and and then I also have been in relationships before in the past where it was more of secret and wasn't as public. And I knew I didn't want that. That can erode and create deep insecurity with inside of a connection. So it was almost, I came to it of knowing this isn't what I don't want. So I'm going to now speak what I do want and what's
Mm.
required. And of course, I was all dramatic and be like, if you can't agree to these things, you'll never kiss my lips again. And we'll go on as being friends.
Well, it makes for a great story. So, one question about that, the when you didn't hear from him for 48 hours, and one of your principles was something around radical ownership, responsibility. You'll say exactly what it is in a moment. How do you know for yourself, and how do you guide your clients to kind of know that line between let me request this is what I really want from the other person to meet me with versus this is where my insecurity is that maybe makes things so I think it's a totally fair, like we have contact every day, totally reasonable and fair. And I might question, okay, am I just having anxious attachment here? Is this my own insecurity? Is it totally fine at this phase in a relationship that maybe there's no problem here? And I'm just curious, and it's not necessarily about that specifically, it's just what had me think about it. How do you know for yourself that difference between let me make a request, this is what I need from you, versus my discomfort, my pain here is actually not about them changing anything, it's about me bringing something different. How do you discern that?
Great question. Well, it's tapping into, is this a fear-based boundary or a conscious-based boundary?
Mm.
Somebody might say that, um, I don't want a partner who lies to me. Most of us don't want partners who lie to us, of course. However, where's that coming from? Like, to be in relationship with me, we need to share each other's password for our phones. Is that coming from a place of fear, or is that coming from a place of consciousness? And only we know that for ourselves, but also, you know, uh, 2 and 3. I think it's a good time to get into number 2 and 3 because they really go hand in hand together. So 2 is both parties agree to own their own shit, and 3 is all feelings are welcome and no internal process is condemned. When we're pair bonding with someone, it's likely that shitty feelings are going to arise. You're going to feel insecure, jealous, um, like all of the sadness, regret, grievance, like you're going to feel it all. And typically, those feelings are stemming from our own conditioning, our own pre-existing stories and narratives. And but the real juice in a relationship is vulnerability. It's like when you
Mhm.
open up and share your heart with somebody. So when you give them that experience of like what it's like to be you. And so I can share my feelings with my partner without blaming them for it because our relationships are free will experience. I do not have to be here. I was recently telling there's one of our We Deepen Angel group members, and we've been unpacking narcissism. And was wondering if a guy that she was dating was a narcissist. And I said, he's only a narcissist if you stay too long.
Ooh. Hmm.
Yeah. So those experiences you can share with somebody, like I could share with my significant other, hey, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z, and it's uncomfortable. And I can do that without blaming him for
Hmm.
what I'm feeling. It can catalyze what I'm feeling, that interaction can bring it up. But again, I'm choosing to stay, and he can actually take that information because he loves me, because we all want to be in a relationship with somebody who actually loves and cares for us. So if somebody really loves and cares for you, they're going to want to modify their behavior or understand you more deeply so that they're not triggering you. And that's the practice of love. That's like the realness of love. When you say I love you, you're pretty much saying I love myself so much when I'm with you.
Hmm. Yeah, I love the way that I feel when I'm with you. I love who I am when I'm with you. I love who I become. I love what you inspire in me. And I love to love you, right? I think love is like you just want to give to that person. You just want them to be the happiest, most joyful, thriving human in the whole universe. And you get so much blessing out of giving to them. At least that's how when I love, I just want to give to them unconditionally, just to lift them up and make them so joyful.
That word compersion. Conversion.
Compersion,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah. Uh,
Yes, joy from your joy. Yeah, I think if that's not present in a relationship, what's the point, right? I think our relationships, right? The first principle is around growth. And to me, the ultimate purpose of a relationship is growth, that the relationship brings out the best in us, it helps us grow, and that we be the safe space for each other to do the stickier, harder growth work that can really only happen in relationship because all of our trauma happens in relationship. There's only so much healing we can do on our own on the mat or in the ceremony or wherever. It's when we get in relationship, it comes up for us to actually deal with. And while it might not be the other person's um, fault or problem that we're triggered or reactive, it might be that they're showing us something that's ancient and from our childhood. It is then their opportunity to be the safe healing space for us to actually receive what we didn't receive when we were likely young and didn't feel loved. And so I'm curious, I know we still have to go deeper into the fourth principle, but I'd be curious to hear you share a little bit about when someone does get reactive or their crunchiness comes out or their unconscious reactivity that naturally gets catalyzed in even the most conscious of relationship. What's your invitation to the other person, how they show up in that moment to actually be the space that enables the other person to heal that part of themselves?
I recently hosted a talk at my house. A friend, Bea Voice, is preparing to speak at South by Southwest on repair. And
Mm.
she shared with this, it was so cute. She shared with us of like, it's like when you take and you're willing to like unzip your perspective and step outside of yourself to be fully there with another person. And almost if there's something, if one person in connection is more, you know, her suggestion was like, choose the person, because when one person gets triggered, the other one typically gets triggered because you're triggered. So it's like two parties having that experience together. So one at a time, step out and unzip your perspective and be willing to fully immerse yourself into the other. And it takes balls and courage from both parties to do this. Because if I'm going to really create spaciousness to fully be themselves, because relationships, I sometimes, when you hold a lot of spaces and where there's a facilitator who's saying that step into my safe space or this is a safe space, I want to almost call bullshit because you don't know what's safe for me. I
Mm.
and so as a relationship for one person might be that I don't like I'm scared of you to be fully expressed. Like that's fearful. So you have to actually be courageous to even let your partner sometimes say the woman next to them who they're thinking is beautiful is beautiful. Like that takes balls. So both parties, it's like this dance of releasing perspective and openness and stepping further into that space of compersion so that your partner can fully be themselves and not contort themselves in any way to be in that relationship with you.
Mm. I love Bea's that perspective because to me that's making it not personal, which is hard. But if we have the ability to be the adult in the room, because usually when someone's reactive, it's the young part of themselves that's acting out. It's not so conscious. And then if you go into that feedback loop, it usually doesn't end well or repair is needed. But if one person can say this isn't actually about me, even though it feels really about me right now, because it's so intimate. It feels so directive between two. The energy is just like this. And so it feels so personal and it's hard. But the ability to say, like, okay, I'm going to be the adult right now, or in Bea's, like, I'm going to unzip my perspective and actually just be present with this person and actually just be the presence of love with curiosity and safety, because safety, an aspect of safety is that I'm not judging and I'm not making it about me. I'm actually just the witness, like life witnessing. And so often, all we really want is to be seen and witnessed and recognized. But so rarely do we actually feel like true just presence from somebody. And gosh, that's a nice principle, a nice ideal. I know harder in practice. What have you found? Is there like a little key, a little anchor that you pull on in the moment when your partner gets reactive and you notice yourself rising to meet that? Is there something that you say to yourself or a little like somatic practice that has you be able to do the unzip?
I try to find some comedy in it.
Mm,
Like that is so in clown, we learn tragedy plus time equals comedy. And you can replace time with space and zoom out like I'm overlooking and watching God or some other, figure zooming down and looking at these two people as they're interacting. And that can then create a bit of lightness. It's almost, you can say for a moment, I disassociate, or I'm like, okay, let me come and be the investigator of what's actually happening
mhm,
and look up above and up above it all, and then come back into it and reattach to myself and ground in and it's can even be those that advice that we used to get of never go to bed in a fight or in a disagreement.
mhm.
I like sleeping on it sometimes.
Mm, some space sometimes. Yeah, I think the discernment of knowing when it's time to try to resolve or process something or when that's just going to lead into a spiral is
Yeah.
good discernment. Yeah, I like the idea in principle, and I also think there's more nuance to it. But I love that bringing some comedy, and it's not quite disassociating. It's really just moving into observation because disassociation is like you check out, which is an avoidance strategy when you just can't handle. Versus I'm actually zooming out into witness consciousness and becoming bigger than my narrow, limited. Just because emotional experience, while it's relevant and important, often comes from not actually the present moment, from other things that we're carrying forward that this moment is reacting in us. And so can I actually zoom out and say, like, what's actually really happening here? Like what's real? So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And the clown, now I'm gonna like be like, look at these two little cute clowns who are just doing their best clowning around as humans.
Yeah,
Okay, so
totally.
fourth principle. Remind us the fourth principle.
the relationship is a place to practice love. Even if you're dating, I know we're in relationship now but
Mhm.
dating is a place to practice love, relationship is a place to practice love. And it's a practice. It's showing up again and again and again and asking, what would love do now? What would love do now? And what would love do here? And the answer is going to be different every single time, but keep asking that question. And if love is a practice, then how do you keep studying? Like, we want to master love. And so that's relationship books, that's seminars, that's jumping onto TED.com and sourcing other relationship speakers and whatnot and geeking out on the topic of love.
I love that invitation. There's so many things that we study that we get interested in. And I think it's certainly a worthwhile study because it's the point is love. And even for myself, somebody who's deeply committed to living a life of love, I notice the little places just in any relation, not just in romantic relationship, where I lose connection. When I lose connection with love, it's because I become self-centered. And it's not about losing the self, right? You shared about how you came into the relationship with these clear asks of what was going to have you thrive and not sacrificing yourself or any of that. So it's not about losing oneself, but there is a difference between that and then being self-centered, which often comes with like some sense of lack. Like I don't have enough energy to be loving, or I don't have it, or I have to protect some version of protecting myself is where, and it's very subtle, but that's where I will lose rather than asking like what would love do or how would love express. Those are the moments that I lose connection to the expression of love and making sure that everybody around me feels loved. It's really interesting. It happens when I'm tired usually and feel like I need to protect my sleep or my space. But it's just worthwhile and really looking at like where are all those little places in those little moments where I don't have somebody in my environment feel loved. And it's more of like a me. It's kind of like a taking energy. And I'm curious, how do you think about like having needs, your own needs met? And being oriented towards self in a healthy, honoring way, but never losing connection to love, which is really, I feel more of like a way of being that always includes others as well.
I read the Seven Habits of a Highly Effective People when I was in college, Stephen
Mhm.
Covey's book.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And he says that humans' greatest achievement is interdependence, not independence. And so it's the remembering we are on the same team.
Yeah.
In order for me to show up in this relationship, to really care for this other person, to be a teammate to you, I also have to care for myself. So I need to go to my yoga. I need to eat healthy, nutritious meals. I need to take my supplements. I need to get my good sleep so that I can be there and connected and love you and show up for you. I, you know, I've studied Kabbalah for over a decade, and I pray for a world that at some point we can get to where we all love in this way. But in Kabbalah, they believe that true love is when you are putting someone else's needs before your own, and that
Yeah.
other person is putting your needs before their own. And it's really rare to get into those relationships. And that truly to me is a soulmate relationship. And those relationships are earned experiences. You don't just come in to meet somebody and are able to fully, I mean, you've got to discern. Like we do have to protect some of our own energy to make sure. And this is you are going to trip and fall. You are going to become selfish sometimes. And that's why your intimacy journey is your life story, because it is this process through your lifetime of removing those layers of the ego. And just as you think you've gotten as far as you can go, you're going to go further and further and further, coupled with those ever increasing acts of sharing. And that's what makes life so fulfilling and juicy. So, yes, you will get selfish, and then you'll become unselfish, and then you
Oh,
remember you go,
me.
yes.
Mhm. Yeah, and then we'll remember that we're actually here for others, and that by giving and loving and taking care of others, we actually have our needs met, which is a radical revelation to realize that if we're only focused on having our own needs met, it's much harder to have our needs met because they get met by life and by relationships. So the more that we focus out and give, the more we actually receive. And I've seen that in my life. I'm sure you've seen that in your life. Um, okay, so we're just about at time. I want to ask you one more question. And it's about dating and love in community. And one thing I've noticed recently, it's been coming up here and there, and I've experienced this as well, is what do you do when you are attracted to somebody's partner or even different than like someone who's in a committed long-term relationship, but when there's people dating and it's not a committed long-term, they're still like, I don't know if they're gonna be together, they haven't made those commitments, because that's a little bit different, right? Um, I've been attracted to somebody recently who's dating. They're not committed, but they're definitely doing a thing. And I've had other friends over the years come, and I'm gonna ask them a two-part question. It's like, what do you do in moments like that, right? Like, how do you tend to the relational field? And you can also just expand it out a bit more because I know a lot of your work is about dating and love and relationships in community and tending to the relational field well and to the community well. And so just leave us with some of your insights and thoughts about that.
What, I mean, what an interesting last question, because we could record a whole entire podcast on this topic. Um, you know, I I like to think that we are connecting with each other to inspire higher relationships and deeper relationships across the board. So I'll speak to the question first off from my as being in relationship. My One of my values was important to me, to love my partner, is that his relationships, all of them in his life, the important ones, get better.
Mm,
That if we're in relationship, that the relationship with him and his children is better than it was before. His relationship with his previous partner is better than it was without me.
mm,
And I think as we're also relating women with men who are in partnership, that if we can view it as that we want that relationship with the other person, we're not competing with the partner or who else they're dating. We are there as, you could call it, terminology, the highest priestess. We're there to actually heighten those connections and to evolve those relationships. And we can step out of our own way because there is, whether you believe in God or universe or something else, there's fate, there's an unraveling. So we actually don't have to operate in any type of manipulative energy to make something happen for our own good. It will happen as it's supposed to be. There was a moment with my significant other when he was dating other people, I was dating other people. And at one time, I went to go pull away because another woman had showed up, and he responded with, I guess we're poly and we're in a poly relationship." And I had never had any intention, desire to be in a poly relationship. But now, I love this man. I'd never tried it out. So I was like, okay. I went and downloaded the book Polysecure and read Jessica Fern's book. Um, and for me, I realized that I am here. I have a purpose. Like, my energy is really important to me. So I want to have a deep connective relationship. So when we did enter in exclusivity, we are primary partners, and we might have fun experiences out there with other individuals that say, hey, like a play party or another event like that. But it's us together, and our connection comes first. And but when he was dating other people and I was dating other people, I remember there was at times I was, acting as his dating coach. Like, how can I support her? How can I support you? And then it got to a place where I was like, I actually can't do that and advocate for myself at the same time then advocating for her. So I got to actually leave, or something's got to rewire with inside of this connection. And I
Mm.
think just, as being somebody who's currently single and dating, and other people are dating too, of remembering that there is a higher power and angels, and you have angels, and whether all the woo-woo stuff that is, there's some truth to it, and there's magic. And so surrender to the magic and let it unfold, and don't do anything that makes your life challenging and drains you. And sometimes if that other connection isn't clear and there's not a clear path to another human being, then it's just not worth it at that moment, and just wait for a clear path.
What a powerful way to end. And that can be applied beyond relationships, right? Like noticing where we're forcing, where we're really trying to effort something, where something's not clear and yet we're going after it anyway, trying to make something happen. I think that's always, it's not worth our peace. Nothing's worth our peace. And so if the pursuit of a person or something in our life is actually hijacking our peace, I think that's such a great indicator that we're off, that there's something that we're, grasping towards. And so I love that message, and just want to underline as also a life method or principle, which is what would love do, and that relationship is an opportunity to practice love, but all of life is relationship and relationships, which means that all of life is an opportunity to practice love. And that's one thing I really received from you in this conversation, is to practice love, to study love, to have love be something that's on our mind and in our research and in our practice, and something we reflect on and contemplate on and have conversations about, and go into spaces where others are having conversations about it, and really inquire about this thing that everyone wants and talks about, and all wisdom traditions agree is the highest expression of life. And yet, what is it? And what does it look like in practice? And who am I in it? And what does it mean to be love and create love? And so I just, it's a beautiful invitation for us to be in. And I loved this conversation with you. Such a grounded, expansive perspective of relationship, of dating. I also feel inspired to go, 'cause I don't know how exactly, but to go on more dates.
There at Harvard, there has to be some great men.
They haven't, yeah, maybe. I haven't found them yet. I found some younger ones that are sweet, but
It's gonna be great. No age
well,
discrimination.
intention, no age is fair, but I think intention. I think intention is a big part of it, right? It's like, okay, rather than only holding out for my person, and there's kind of this ultimatum energy that perhaps pushes away, just be willing to play more and build friendships. That's the biggest takeaway I got, really. I was kind of joking about the go out and dating thing. The thing that really landed for me, that was a new insight, Christina, was that as you meet incredible people that you may be interested in dating, actually pursue friendship first as the primary intention, and see if dating wants to unfold from that. So I really loved that.
Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure to be with you.
This was such a joy. I love you. You're so wise. Tell us how we can connect with you.
You go to wedeepen.com. You can see we have up and coming 4-day masterminds for your love life called the We Deepen Love Immersions. Also, you can find out more information on the We Deepen Angel Group, which is our high impact, high touch, year-long love mastermind program. And I'm on Instagram at Christina Weber with 1B.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming to share and just speaking to our hearts. It's a perfect way to end day one on the topic of love. So thank you, Christina. And may all the work that you're doing be so successful. It's so important that we have spaces to practice love and relationships. So, and I love that you're collaborating with Annie Lala. She's such an inspiration. I love her and the way she speaks about love and relationships. So you two are just a match made in heaven. What an epic
Epic.
partnership.
She's
I love
epic.
it.
I went and found my love mentor and I'm like, come here, work with me.
Oh, so good. Also, that's so inspiring. Your love mentor, and then you're like, let's build something together. Way to, right? You mentioned bring inspiring people around you. So well done. Way to model that. And until next time, it was great to have you.
It's good to have you. Thank you so much.
And